Hello, today we're going to talk about how to make the final shot for your aquarium. In this video I will be talking about what settings, equipment and what setup to use, how to make the best final shot as possible. How would you make a perfect photo of your aquarium is the question. Well, maybe you want to enter some contest or it is a nice memory of your aquarium. So let's start about what settings to use when making the final shot. When making photos, it's really important that light is everything in photography. External flashes will improve the picture quality a lot because external flashes will give a lot amount of light, and with these flashes you can use much better settings to get much sharper photos. If you do not use external flash, you will see you cannot shoot with the settings I recommend. The photo will be very dark. The things you can do if you don't want to use external flash is you use a higher ISO, but I recommend not to go higher than 800. About the shutter speed, you can use a lower number, but the fish will be more blurry. So when you have external flashes, I recommend the following settings. It depends if you have a DX or a FX sensor on your camera. Well, if you have a DX camera, which are mostly the cheaper camera, like I have the Canon 700D, I use a focal length between 18 to 24 millimeters. When you have a full frame camera, that means you have a FX sensor, I recommend a 28 to 30 millimeters focal length. When you have a tank between 30 to 80 centimeters, I recommend an aperture between 8 to 11. When you have a tank of 90 centimeters and above, I recommend an aperture of 5.6 to 8. But a higher number doesn't really hurt. You use the lowest ISO as possible, the white balance you put on automatic, and the shutter speed you put on at least 1/200 of a second. I always use manual focus, and I do this by just zooming in on some hardscape or plants and adjust it until it's sharp. So let's move on to some tips for making the final shot. Well, the tank glass acts as a mirror, so you should be careful being in front of it because it can reflect into the camera. Because of this, also the photographers should wear black clothes and all equipment should be black as well. Another tip is to not use white or silver lenses because the rim will show if you're too close. So now we are done with settings. I want to talk about what equipment do I use for the final shot. First we start off with what camera. I have a Canon 700D, which is an entry DSLR camera, and it's good enough. You don't really need the most expensive DSLR camera to make good photos. Usually, more expensive DSLR cameras have more options, but it's not necessary. I bought this Canon 700D on the second-hand market for €275. Okay, let's move on to what lens do I use for a full tank shot. Firstly, it is very important to invest in a good lens. The lens really makes the difference. For a full tank shot, when having a DX sensor like me, the most cheap cameras, I use a focal length I advise between 18 to 24 millimeters. And that's why I use the Canon 24 millimeters Pancake. It's a really good lens and it makes really nice full tank shots. Okay, let's talk about what external flash do I use for my aquarium. Firstly, there is a big difference between the prices of external flashes on the market. If you compare Canon to Yongnuo, the difference is really hundreds of euros. Usually more expensive flashes have a TTL option. With this option you don't have to set the power output on your flash. The flash connects with your camera and chooses the power output automatically based on the environment. For aquarium photography I don't recommend the expensive TTL flashes. The cheaper manual flashes will work perfect. You just have to figure out once what settings work well for your tank. After doing some research, I came to the conclusion that the Yongnuo 563 is a very good choice. It has lots of power and is affordable. Personally, I use two of these flashes on my 45 cm and my 80 cm tank for full tank shots. When you have a tank like 120 cm or bigger, I recommend using 3 of these flashes. Beside these 2 flashes, you also need a trigger to make the flashes go off. For this I use the Yongnuo IN560TX2 wireless controller. It is a little bit more expensive than other triggers, but it gives you the opportunity to control the flash's output from the controller on your camera. Okay, let's talk about how do I create a surface ripple on my tank for the final shot. A lot of people use a hairdryer, which is a really nice way to create a very nice surface ripple on top of the tank for the photo. But I don't like about it that your hands are not free, and I don't have a tripod to put a hairdryer on, and that's why I use an aquarium fan. It works really well on small tanks like an ADA 45P, but if you use it on bigger tanks the surface ripple will be less, but it still works. And of course you use a tripod for making the final shot. It is very important and doesn't have to be expensive at all. I got mine for only 10 euros on the second-hand market. The only thing you have to be sure about is that it can carry the weight of the camera and the lens. It is really nice to have a hanger kit for a full tank shot. With a hanger kit you can easily raise the lights 30 centimeters above the waterline, and when you raise the lights that high you can easily create that white background that many people like for a contest photo. It is very important to reduce the amount of light that is entering the camera lens. This way we can prevent it by putting some black cardboard on top of the tank and lay it against the hanger kit for some stability. On the inside of the black cardboard box we put some aluminum foil so that the light will even go better into the aquarium, because it reflects the light of the flash. A really useful piece of equipment is a diffuser that you put straight on the external flash. It is very cheap and very effective. It only costs about €1 a piece and makes the light softer and gives the flash a better spread. Here you can see an example of my ADA 45P where I'm taking the final shot. All the equipment is removed from the tank and you can see the black aquarium fan on the right which creates a surface ripple. The black cardboard is on top of the aquarium with reflection fall inside. The flashes are behind the cardboard laying on the light. To be extra safe that the flashes will not go into the aquarium, I secured them with a hook, with a wire, with a zip tie. Using flash is lots of trial and error at the beginning, but once you figured it out it becomes very easy. Sometimes I aim a flash towards the back and sometimes both aiming at the front glass. Different positions will give different results. For example, shadows. It's all trial and error. For the final shot it is really important to have the fish in the right position. It can take lots of photos to take that perfect final shot. It is common to take 200 photos and only have a few good ones which still aren't perfect. It requires some patience and dedication to make that perfect final shot. It is best to analyze the fish and wait for them to school in a nice line. You can use a remote controller to make the camera go off, but I use a 2-second timer with the settings on the camera and just push the button on the camera. I use a 2-second timer so the camera doesn't move when I click it. This can cause blur. So in short, here we see a picture of how your setup can look like when taking the final shot. I always advise to put your tank at least 20 centimeters from the wall. This way it is easier to take the final shot. I hope you learned something today and thanks for watching.